Welcome to Leap Listens. I'm Sarah McGregor.
And I'm Roger Kalis.
And today we have the pleasure of being joined by a special guest.
A multifaceted businesswoman with a passion for empowering women. In her professional life, she works as a senior consultant for IT consultancy CGI, where she's the former chair of the Successful Women's Network. And she currently chairs the Young Energy Professionals Forum in the UK. Outside of work, she is a social media sensation and food content creator through her platform Cooking with Kaz. And she's also the author of a mouth-watering cookbook, Zimbabwean Food Reimagined. Very impressive. Welcome to Leap Listens, Caroline Gundu.
Thank you for that introduction. I wasn't expecting that, but thank you.
So, Caroline, we met a couple of years ago, early 2020, when we were filming a recruitment video, and we got to meet some of the women's network that you were at the time chair. Lots happened since then. Tell us, Caroline, how has life been for you?
I mean, for starters, none of us foresaw a global pandemic. Nobody expected to be indoors and, working from home and dealing with life in a completely different way. So you're definitely right when you say a lot has happened. As you mentioned, I was chair of the Women's Network, and it's been a really interesting couple of years. Now we're in 2022, and it's seeming like we're still trying to get a hang of what happened in 2019. So it's been a bit of a journey.
Yeah, and within that time, not only have you now become the chair of the Young Energy Professionals Forum, but also you've launched a cookbook.
Yeah, so the cookbook was actually a lockdown project. I'd always said I wanted to write a cookbook with the content creation work that I do on Cooking with Kaz. And I just never really had the time. The nature of consultancy work, you're traveling and you're doing client work. And it was just something that I always said I was going to do at some point. And the pandemic really opened up an opportunity for me to just focus and get it done.
You had great success in your time as chair of the Women's Network at CGI. Tell us about that time and some of your achievements.
So I joined CGI at a time where the previous chair had gone on mat leave, and it turned out that there was an opportunity to actually lead the network. I remember 3 months being into the job, saying actually what's the worst that could happen and taking on the opportunity. From then on till now, it's been about 3 years since I took over the role, and a lot happened. Grew the network to become the biggest diversity, equity and inclusion staff-led community group within the organization with over 250 members. Not only did the network grow in terms of the number of membership, but the impact that we made. We raised thousands of pounds for charity. We raised awareness on issues that directly affect women, such as fertility and menopause, career progression, and just parenting even in a lockdown. And we discussed those topics. We also recognized and celebrated achievement and exceptional talent within our organization by hosting an award ceremony. We had Bianca Miller, the ex-apprentice star, who came and sort of did a keynote speech on personal branding. So that was really cool. It was a very rewarding experience, and also got a chance to meet you guys and work on a really cool project as well.
Oh, thanks, Caroline.
That was obviously one of the high points.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, what support that you've had as well from CGI.
Absolutely.
And it's really interesting when you said, I just had to go ahead and just do it, and you got the opportunity to be chair of the Women's Network. And I think that leads really nicely actually into the topic of what we're talking about today. So we're going to be talking about the confidence gap. This is a term coined by Dr. Russ Harris. He's written a book on the subject, which in part explains why men tend to outperform women in the workplace. His research suggests that compared with men, women don't consider themselves as ready for promotion. They'll predict they'll do worse on tests, and they generally underestimate their abilities. And of course, men aren't exempt from feelings of self-doubt, but there are studies that indicate that they don't tend to let those feelings affect like their day-to-day lives to the extent that women do. And so, Caroline, What are your thoughts on the notion that the confidence gap has widened for women in terms of, like, you know, the hybrid working environments and virtual working?
It's an interesting concept, and I actually did take some time to really think about what does the confidence gap look like. And I think more than anything, it's probably more a personality thing than it is men versus women. I think navigating hybrid working has affected women in different ways depending on their circumstances. So if you're a mother, the way that you've taken to hybrid working in comparison to maybe a solo woman is probably completely different. So I can probably speak from my context. At the beginning of the first pandemic, I stayed with family, 5 adults under one roof, all needing to work from home. And I guess even the cultural differences that occur, because when you're at work, I guess you have a persona that you bring into work, don't you? But at home, there's another persona. I also spoke to women who were dealing with, homeschooling, because there was a time where schools were closed. And again, for a lot of them, it was just about getting the day job done, doing enough to justify, I'm at work. But actually, a lot of it was mom guilt, having to deal with the caregiving responsibilities that they had, and as well as the role that they had in the organization as a consultant. So I think as a result, different circumstances have just left people in different in different situations, affecting confidence. And I think because it's such a massive change, it's affecting everyone. But there's so many pros, right, to hybrid working. I mean, the flexibility, those quick catch-ups that if it was a face-to-face interaction, it might have taken a long time to get through, that quiet time you need when you just need to catch up on life, catch up on your admin. All those things are the positives that I think have come out of that. But then you also have the not so positive stuff, like not really having a routine and the struggling with the work-life balance, and all those things impact confidence.
Fantastic achievements there, Caroline. You really did make the most of the opportunity. I'm guessing there must have been someone who spotted your potential and encouraged you. And I'm wondering if you've got any advice for managers and leaders to encourage women with their confidence.
So it's interesting you said that you think a manager might have recognized it. So what actually happened was I was in a lift with the head of CSR at the time. I didn't know who she was. We just had a conversation, and I mentioned that I'd be interested in joining a women's group. And she sort of mentioned that actually the current leader had gone away. And I said, okay, so are there any plans to kind of continue the group? And how do I get involved? So I literally volunteered myself for the role after expressing my interest in the community. So it wasn't necessarily somebody saw me behaving in a certain way or doing certain things and thought I'll be a good fit. It was, I wanted the opportunity, so I went for it. I think there are two things that...
an elevator pitch.
Yeah. It's actually quite funny. I never thought of it that way, but yeah, it was an elevator pitch. Because what then happened after, I was now getting invited to certain meetings, and I had to pitch the idea and how I would progress the women's network and so on and so forth. And that's how the position kind of ended up being mine. And I think there are two things to think about. Yes, there's a role that managers need to play in terms of, encouraging women and empowering women to go for opportunities. But I think as a woman, you also need to be self-confident and self-empowered. If you are not expressing or seeking for these opportunities for yourself, you're not going to find something that fulfills you. So it's really about being open and honest about what your interests are, the kind of an impact you want to make, really taking some time to self-reflect about, what qualities you have and what capabilities you have that could further help your organization by you putting yourself forward for certain opportunities. And I think absolutely managers have a role to kind of cultivate that talent and recognizing that in people. And I think in a pandemic, it's a little bit more challenging because obviously you can't see people in action. It's not, a conversation by the coffee machine or in the lift, like my scenario. So it really is for managers to proactively reach out to people, those virtual coffees and informal meetings where, for the next 30 minutes, we're not talking about anything work related. I just want to sort of check in on you. I find that through those types of conversations, you tend to find where people's interests are and where their minds are at, and if they're in a space where they can accommodate new and fresh opportunities.
That's great advice, isn't it? And It's so simple. Just, let's have hang out on Microsoft Teams and just have a quick coffee and just listen. It's so simple, but not everyone is doing that.
I wondered if there was anything else that you've observed that really comes to the fore now that people are working or have been working remotely.
So actually having a culture of trust and accountability and accountability and giving people the responsibility to manage their own times and diaries, I think that goes a long way. We found that our women's network really thrived during the pandemic because I guess managers were encouraging people to go attend our events, but I think people also had the time and the visibility of what it is we were doing. And also I think another key thing that I'd want to add is participation in meetings. I was just looking at some recent research where it was stating that 1 in 5 women felt ignored or overlooked by their co-workers during video calls. And I think as a person chairing a call or as a manager, it's important to just ensure that, people are getting the opportunity to participate, people not being overlooked or ignored, using the features in Teams, like the raising your hand sign and so on and so forth. I think those things are helpful too.
You as a person, obviously you're a confident person, you're a successful person, you've got a social media presence, you're used to putting yourself out there and cornering people in lifts. What would you say though? How do you draw someone out of themselves if you spot someone, doesn't have your natural confidence?
I guess the first thing is being attentive to who's speaking and who's speaking the most. And then maybe opening it up and asking, for an example, Sarah, what do you think? That then kind of invites the person to participate, and actually saying it at the beginning of the call that, we would want everyone to participate during this conversation, and we may ask you what you think as we progress. Confidence is something that you just have to develop internally as an individual. The world is changing, and you can't sort of excuse yourself from not being visible by not investing. They say some people are natural born leaders and some people are made leaders. You have to invest in the skill that you need to be able to be visible and valuable within that environment. So if you find that actually I'm not as confident, then do some courses on developing your personal confidence, get some feedback, get some mentors or people that you can observe to kind of help you through that. Because I think saying you're just not confident is not a reason not to then further invest in that skill to become better.
Definitely. And you're right, it's a really, really important skill to learn. So from everything you've told us today, Caroline, what would be your one killer piece of advice?
Take a human approach to working. Take an interest in, what happens to this person outside of their work environment, because actually it might feed into how they behave within the workplace. Obviously, as much as they're willing to share. I know some people want to distinctively have, a work persona and a home persona. But I think actually with the pandemic, a lot of that has now merged. I remember when I sort of started my career, I've been doing Cooking with Kaz for years, but because it's quite central to who I am and it's what I spend my weekends doing. In the pandemic, you come back, what have you been up to? It's natural to just sort of start seeping out those details about yourself. So I think actually there is something to sharing a bit about yourself in terms of creating a more human environment within the workplace as well.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. You've been a brilliant guest.
And it's been great to see you and hear from you again.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
What a great guest.
Oh, she's brilliant, isn't she? Even though she comes across as this supremely confident, obviously that's something a skill that she's had to learn. And I guess that's, to me, one of the key takeaways.
Definitely. And I think, like she summed up really nicely, is that organisations, leaders and managers should be supporting women more through mentoring and ensuring also that there's role models for younger professionals, particularly in male-dominated disciplines. What I really liked about Caroline is she just said, she just went for it. She just did it and then figured it out afterwards. And I think that's what you have to do.
Yeah, that, and get trapped in the lift with the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. So
is that... Are we done?
We're done.
Excellent. Have we managed to think about how we sign these things off yet?
Not quite. We're just...
we need something, don't we?
We do. Sing a little song or something.
All right. Well, until the next time.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.